Well, I'm back in one of my favourite lake locations in North Wales today, and I'm determined to shoot something a bit different to what I normally shoot here. Now, I'm actually feeling quite smug or proud of myself today, because I was going to go for a walk up on the Nantler Ridge up there, but it is in cloud, and I've done that before. In fact, it was last spring and I regretted it. I should have stayed down by the lake like I've done today. So for once, I'm heeding my own advice. Now there is the famous tree which I have captured time and time again, and time and time and time and time again. So I'm not capturing it today. It's been done to death. Now, speaking of cliches, yes, the posts and the wire running into the water. Now, I'm not totally averse to shooting that sort of material with a long lens, but I will hold judgment till I have looked around the rest of the area. And some of these actually look nicer, these stones over here. But I may come back and shoot it. I may. Oh, I think I'm going to have a bit of a standoff with the sheep. Oh, winner. Well, for some reason I've climbed the mountain behind the lake, just for exercise probably. There aren't very many great views from up here, and now I've got to get back down again. Well, having just said that there were no images up here to be had, as I did a 180 and came back down, as it happens, you tend to see images. So I have got this composition here with the beautiful top of this mountain. I'm going to put the name up, I cannot pronounce it. And also going up towards Llyn over here, and I do love these grasses down here. Now, I probably need to push the contrast up a bit, either in the dark room or light room, but it's definitely got potential. Oh, another thing as well, I've got no filters on the lens for this shot. The reason being, I haven't got a filter big enough with me for my wide angle lens. It's got a very big filter ring, 95mm. I have got one at home, but it's not much use at home.
Now, I'm reasonably happy with this one. It's quite well balanced in the square format. I think the arrangement of the elements is quite nice. Those foreground grasses really are a treat. But I could do with probably a bit more information in the sky, and maybe a bit of cloud or a bit of rain actually in there. So yeah, it's probably a work in progress, this one.
Now, whilst in this spot, I'm not going to pass up the opportunity of maybe getting a second composition, which is not something I'd normally do from the same position, but some light's coming through in the background now onto this mountain here. I think it's Mynyd Mawr, and some lovely rocks in the foreground, and I've got these grasses again down here. There are possibilities. I think I will take my time though and scout it a little. Okay, so standard lens. Going to be around about f16 for this, I think. Oh, now I want to get a nice balance between the foreground rocks on the right, the mountain on the left, distant peaks in the background, in the distance, who'd have thought it, with a bit of light coming through. The light's dipped at the moment, it may come back, it may not. So while it's not there, I shall get the composition refined. Now, this is just a case of me working with the delightful waist level finder, which is far easier than the prism finder if you can get the right angle on it. Prism finder is great for eye level, but once you're working with a scene which is low enough and the tripod's low enough, the waist level finder is just the best. So I'm thinking I need some of the mountain on the left to be in, and some of these boulders on the right to be in as well. But I must get those peaks, and they are the star of the show. Just look at them, magnificent. In fact, the light's coming back, so I better get on with it. Right, I have got time to put a filter on here, and I've got a filter which fits my standard lens, of course, with the delightful pucker genuine Bronica lens hood. These are a dream to work with if you can get one. They're about £60, which is ludicrous, but ludicrously good as well. Holds it all in position, gives it plenty of shade, filter in the front, magnificent. Right, the technical bit, the light meter reading. This shouldn't be too bad actually, because there's still plenty of shadows in the foreground which are lit by this soft overhead muted lighting. A bit of brightness in the background. XP2 Super is going to just have that for breakfast. That's no trouble at all. So let me just meter around the shadows in the rocks a little bit. I am going for I said F16. I may go F22 actually. This lens is very good at F22 because there's these very close rocks which I need. 22, 1 second in the shadows. Yeah, 2 seconds, half a second in the shadows. I think the deepest shadow is 1 second, and that's going to be something I want black. So I think the deepest shadow, probably half a second. I will actually take a highlight reading just for the hell of it. So half a second is the deepest shadow. And the highlight is 1/25th. So quite a brightness range actually. I can afford the highlights to run away a bit though. I've also allowed an extra stop for the yellow filter, so I'm actually going to give it 1/4 of a second. I would rather have more shadow detail and risk a bit of blocking up in the highlights. If you lose shadow detail, especially with XP2 Super, it's ugly. Okay, half a second. Let's just wait to see if we get any more dramatic lighting.
Well, I like the way that the mountains hold the sky in quite nicely there, and there's enough foreground detail, and the sharpness is maintained pretty well, so F22 I think was the best decision here. I've had to do some local dodging and burning to emphasise the areas I want the eye drawn to, such as the light area on the distant mountain, the scree slopes, but also darken some of the foreground areas which would distract you far too much if they were left as a light, open space.
Now the wind has got up a little bit in my time up on the top of the mountain, which really makes shooting the lake a bit pointless, to be honest. There's not going to be any reflections and it goes very dark. Obviously it's it's not reflecting the light quite as much as it would when it's totally still. So I'm going to have to find something else away from the lake, but there is a lot of wonderful material around here, as I've seen on previous trips. Oh, sort yourself out, Steve. Right. I was quite taken when I was just doing a bit of previewing of these beautiful moss-covered boulders. And again, what makes them work is that, like an earlier shot, there are areas of white, like quartz, coming through there. And there are also grasses. Now, some of the grasses are green, some are brown. So in black and white, we're going to have a contrast there. One's going to look dark grey, one's going to look light grey. Now, metering for this was absolutely straightforward and simple. Everything's about 1/4 of a second at F22, allowing another stop for my yellow filter. That's half a second at F22. There's absolutely hardly any dynamic range in there. So take a couple of frames, and yeah, I think this one actually looks really good in the square format. It's made for the square format.
Now, I think I could have slightly improved on this one, to be honest, because the grasses are moving out of the frame on the bottom left and also moving up to the top left and also top right. But I only have rocks at the bottom right now. That's not a huge problem, but they are quite bright, those rocks. And I think it would have been nice to recompose slightly and bring something into that bottom right-hand corner. So again, I think a little bit more time spent in this area would pay dividends in future.
Well, in much the same manner as the last shot, maybe my eye is gravitating towards these detail sort of images. I do like this old gnarly branch in amongst these grasses and mosses, partly because it's got that whole square format thing going on, which is ideal for the Bronica and the standard lens. So I've been, as you could probably see, just working out the best angle, and it's definitely round here. As you come too far up, it just doesn't look right, does it? This is at the bottom of the frame. I really like the idea that this is at the side of the frame and it brings you across into these grasses, and they do the same thing. So let's get the camera set up. I think I'm going to need my prism finder on for this, unfortunately. I say unfortunately, it's not a bad thing, the prism finder. Given the chance though, I'd always use the weight level finder. What I'm struggling to do at the moment is to get myself lined up. Let me just show you. What I'm trying to do is get myself far enough back from this subject so I can encompass all the elements, and I don't want to crop out any of the branch. The branch is the superstar here. Yeah, I'm tempted to move it, but I'm not, because it's actually sort of embedded itself into the landscape, and there's a bit of sheep's wool on it, and it's part of this location. It's almost like sacred, so I'm not going to touch it. I am just going to have to accept that there will be a slight crop on the right hand side of it as it drops out the frame. It's just the way it is. Now I'm assuming that the light levels are going to be the same as they were before, and it's going to be pretty much a case of making a middle reading off this, because it's all grey, there's no blacks in there. Yeah, quarter of a second, half a second, quarter of a second. So let's go for half a second with the yellow filter on again. Yellow just to do a bit of separation in there. It always makes it look better, I think, when there's greens in the scene if you use a yellow filter. Just move the little stop down lever. It's not going to be that accurate because, you know, the thing goes very dim, but you can pick up on the sharp grasses at the back, and I can see they're going to be pretty clean and clear. So mirror up, and that's it. Result, nice roll of film.
Now this is another very understated image, another one which I think works perfectly in the square format. I couldn't imagine it in any other format or aspect ratio. And one of the things I do like about this is I am shooting quite a lot of images with the Bronica lately which incorporate branches or trees moving through the frame. And this is one of those images which will sit very nicely with that set. I'm shooting predominantly my local landscape, but wherever I find these compositions now in nature, I am recording them. And I can see myself putting together some work in the future, potentially even maybe a small book or portfolio of this type of image. And it's something you see everywhere, but we rarely notice.
Well, that was a hugely enjoyable shoot in North Wales today. I think I've just about beaten the weather as well, because the clouds are closing in over Snowdon on my right shoulder, and it is going to rain. So back home, get these developed, get them into the vlog. I hope you've enjoyed the vlog. I've absolutely loved it. Fantastic day's exercise, and hopefully some good pictures too. So yes, thanks again for watching. See you again soon.